The sound of seabirds roused Riley from a deep sleep. She was laying on a warm, sandy beach with gentle waves lapping at her feet. Opening her eyes, she lifted her head and saw Alfie lying just a few feet away. The sun was bright overhead, and all traces of the storm were gone. A soft, warm, salty breeze was blowing lightly and mixing with the hushing sounds of the water. Riley checked the opposite direction, but all she saw was a long, empty stretch of beach. Looking back at Alfie, she raised her head higher and searched for her father or aunt, but there were no signs of them. It was then that she noticed strange marks in the sand. She knew they weren't from a sea turtle, as her father had shown her those many times before. These were wide, like a seal's track or something big like that, and like those trails, they headed into the water.
Alfie?
She rasped. Her throat was sore and burned from the salt water she swallowed.
Alfie, are you alive?
No.
Alfie moaned as he raised his head and turned to her.
No, I'm dead. Leave me alone.
What happened?
Riley sat up and gazed around. Behind them, the beach continued up to a dense line of trees. After that, all she could see was jungle. In front of her were beautiful, calm, blue-green waters of the ocean. There was no sign of her father, Aunt Mary, or the event.
The sea monster sank us? That's what happened.
He sat up and looked around.
Where's Mom?
I don't know. I can't see my dad either.
Fear filled Alfie's eyes.
You don't think the sea monster ate them, do you?
No! They're fine. They've probably washed ashore in a different place, that's all.
What place? Where are we?
I don't know. Somewhere in the Bahamas, I guess?
Riley could hardly believe what was happening. A real sea serpent had attacked their boat. The event, her father's pride and joy, was gone. Things like that only happen in movies, but this was no movie. The sand beneath her fingers was real. Her wet feet were real. Somehow, she and Alfie had survived a shipwreck. When Riley pulled up her legs to stand, she felt a sore on her left calf and remembered the sting. Then she remembered the face. She looked down and saw a tiny red pinprick in the center of a dark bruise. She turned to her cousin.
Alfie, you're not gonna believe this, but I saw something in the water right before I blacked out.
Yeah, dummy, we saw that sea monster. It ate the boat, remember?
No, I mean something else. It was like a woman, but not. I saw her before in the water and told Dad, but he didn't believe me. She was really scary looking with sharp pointed teeth and no nose and these freaky black eyes. I saw her again right after she stung me. She told me to go to sleep.
I heard a voice telling me not to be afraid and to go to sleep too.
He looked down at his leg and saw a red dot in the middle of a bruise.
Look, I was stung too. You can still see it.
Riley looked at Alfie's leg and saw it was the same mark she had.
What happened to us?
I can't remember.
Alfie climbed to his feet and cupped his hands over his mouth.
Mom?
He shouted.
Mom, where are you?
Dad! Dad, can you hear me?
She took a few steps down the beach and then stopped. She turned in a tight circle, staring at the sand.
What are you looking at?
The sand.
Duh, I know that. Why?
Alfie, look at it. The only footprints here are ours.
So?
So where is everybody? You know how crowded the other islands are with tourists. But look, there are no footprints here, no coffee cups or candy bar wrappers or anything. It's like we're the first people on this beach.
Don't be stupid. It was the storm. The wind was blowing all over the place. It wiped away all the footprints. Or maybe it was the tide smoothing down the sand. Whatever island this is, it'll be jammed with people.
Yeah, that must be it.
Riley agreed. She started to walk along the shoreline.
Hey, Shorty, where are you going?
I'm going to go look for Dad and Aunt Mary. If we made it to shore, they must have too.
I think we should stay here and wait for someone to find us. That's what happens in the movies.
Fine, you can stay here and wait. But I'm going to find Dad.
Shorty!
Alfie called as she walked away.
Shorty! Riley, wait for me!
Riley turned back and watched her cousin running after her. His face was flushed, and he looked frightened. The truth was, she was frightened too. Very frightened. They were on a beach with no sign of anyone or anything around them. She glanced back out at the calm blue waters and saw only the light waves. She could hardly believe what had just happened to them. They had been sunk by a monster. But where was the debris from the event, or even the life raft? Surely some of the wreckage should have made it to the shore. Alfie didn't say anything as he took his place beside her.
Now what? if we leave the area, what happens if Mom or Uncle Andrew come? They'll never know we were here.
Riley considered for a moment, then nodded.
Stay here. I'll be right back.
She ran up the beach to where the dense jungle started. Without entering, she looked down until she found what she was searching for. She picked up a long stick and carried it back.
What's that for?
Riley broke the stick into 3 pieces, a long one and 2 shorter ones. Then she laid them down on the sand to form an arrow. After that, she pulled off her life vest and laid it down beside the arrow, with her name clearly showing.
Okay, so if Dad or Aunt Mary sees this, they'll know I was here and what direction I went.
Alfie took his vest off and placed it down beside her.
This way, they know we're together.
Good idea.
Riley agreed. With the message left in the sand, Riley and Alfie started to walk along the shoreline, looking for any signs of their parents or the wreckage. But after what felt like hours, they didn't see anything.
What time is it? How long have we been walking?
Riley reached into her pocket for her cell phone, but it was gone. Then she realized the emergency pack she tied around her waist was gone too. She looked over at Alfie and saw that he didn't have his pack either.
Alfie, did you untie your emergency pack when we were in the water?
Alfie shook his head.
No way. I knew we'd need it.
I didn't undo mine either, but they're both gone. So's my cell phone.
Alfie frowned.
But I tied mine really tight.
Me too. So how come they're gone?
She looked back out at the water as the terrible memory of the disaster flooded back to her.
She did it. I don't know how or why, but I'm sure that woman took our stuff.
That's wacko, Shorty. There couldn't have been a woman. I mean, yes, there was that thing that wrecked the boat, but a woman? Like a mermaid or something?
I don't know what she was, but she was there. Who else could have spoken to us in the water or taken our packs?
She looked around at the empty beach.
I know how it sounds, Alfie, but I swear I saw her.
I don't know. This whole thing is really freaky.
They continued walking in silence. Riley kept replaying the final moments of the disaster in her head, reaching the deck, going back to the life raft with her family, then the sea serpent rising out of the water and crushing the boat, the cold water and the stinging in her leg, the woman. She stopped again and looked down at her calf. The bruise was still there, and a scab had formed over the center sting. Then she looked at Alfie's calf, and the exact same mark.
So a sea serpent sank our boat. Then we were both stung and heard voices telling us to go to sleep. That's unbelievable, right?
But it happened.
Alfie was inspecting his own injury.
You know, this almost looks like the mark I got when they had to do a blood test on me when I was going to have my appendix out last year. Only that was on my arm. But that's too weird. We were in the water. Who would want to take our blood?
Not take, give. What if that woman gave us a shot that made us go to sleep?
Alfie was shaking his head.
Why?
I don't know, but someone had to bring us to this island. We weren't near one when the ship went down.
If it's true, do you think they could have gotten Mom and Uncle Andrew?
That's what I'm hoping.
They started walking again, but after a few more minutes, Alfie stopped.
I'm thirsty.
He sat down in the sand.
I need a break.
Riley took a seat beside him. She was thirsty too. But more than that, she was scared. Genuinely scared that something terrible had happened to her father and aunt. She looked back at the jungle behind them.
Alfie, you don't think we're alone here, do you?
Don't be such an idiot, Shorty. We have satellites and airplanes and stuff like that. There are no more deserted islands. I think we're just on the wrong side of this one.
Riley shrugged.
I don't know. We've been walking and haven't seen anybody.
Yeah, 'cause it's a really big island.
He stood up and looked towards the jungle.
I bet there are hotels and stuff in there. I'm gonna check.
Riley stood up as well.
There could also be dangerous animals. What about snakes and poisonous bugs?
Or what about quicksand? You're just a chicken.
No, I'm not. I'm being cautious.
The sound of a barking dog stopped their argument. Riley looked down the beach.
Is that a...
It's a dog!
Riley watched the large, thin dog bounding down the beach from the direction they'd been walking, but as the animal got closer, it didn't look like any kind of dog she'd seen before.
That can't be a dog. It's too big.
Sure it is.
Since when are dogs the size of a small pony? Come on, let's get out of here before it attacks us.
She got hold of Alfie's arm and then they started to run, but the large animal was moving too fast. It soon caught up with them and leaped up on Alfie, knocking him down into the sand. Alfie and Riley both screamed as the dog pounced, but instead of going for Alfie's throat, the enormous animal started to lick his face excitedly.
Get it off me! Get off!
Riley tried to shove the dog away, but then it turned its affection on her and tackled her to the ground, pinning her down. The dog thoroughly licked her face.
Miss Pigglesworth, stop that! Let them up!
A voice called. Riley couldn't see where the voice was coming from. All she could see was a dark, furry head and a long, pink tongue.
Miss Pigglesworth, get off her! Leave them alone!
The voice called again. This time it was much closer. The huge animal climbed off Riley and bounded back to the boy who called it. He ran over and knelt beside Riley.
I'm sorry about that. Miss Pigglesworth can be a bit of a handful at times, but she's really sweet. She never hurt you.
No, she'd drown us.
Alfie complained as he stood up and wiped dog slobber off his face.
What is that thing?
The boy helped Riley to her feet. It was hard to tell, but he looked to be around her age, or maybe a bit older. He had dark blue eyes and shaggy black hair, and was taller than Alfie, but much leaner. He was wearing white pants and a striped shirt in a style that seemed old-fashioned. The animal came over to Riley and licked her arm. It almost looked like an Irish wolfhound with the same dark coloring, but it was so much bigger.
That's Miss Pigglesworth, and I'm Sebastian, but everyone calls me Bastian.
What kind of dog is that? I've never seen one so big.
I know. That's what makes her special. What's your name?
I'm Riley, and this is Alfie.
Alfie.
Bastian said. He offered to shake Alfie's hand. Alfie swatted it away.
So, like, is your family here on vacation or something? 'Cause we need to talk to someone quick. We've been shipwrecked and can't find my mom or Riley's dad. We need to send out a search party immediately.
Bastian frowned.
Your mom and her dad? You aren't brother and sister?
Riley shook her head.
Alfie's my cousin. His mom is my dad's sister. We were on our sailboat, the event, when this big storm hit. Then an enormous sea monster attacked our boat and sank it. Can you help us find them?
Riley noticed how Bastian didn't react to the news of a sea monster. Instead, he smiled and said,
Of course I'll help. So will Miss Pigglesworth.
He looked down at the dog.
Can you smell anyone else?
The strange dog raised her head and sniffed the air. She ran farther down the beach, sniffing all the way. After a moment, she turned and bounded back.
Well,
Miss Pigglesworth shook her head and gave a soft woof.
I'm sorry. She can't smell them. Perhaps they're landed on the other side of the island.
You're listening to your dog.
Of course. Miss Pigglesworth never lies.
No, he means your dog can understand you, and you can understand her?
Of course. Miss Pigglesworth has been with me my entire life. We understand each other perfectly.
The dog whined and barked again. Bastian nodded.
They might have. Perhaps your family's gone into the community ahead of you.
Community?
Do you mean like a city? Or town?
No, it's the community.
Bastian said. He pointed towards the jungle.
Come, I'll take you there.
Riley looked at the dense jungle.
We were worried this was a deserted island.
Deserted? No, far from it. But not many people like to venture down to the water's edge. Leviathan hunts these waters and sometimes come ashore. It can be a bit dangerous without protection.
Riley looked around nervously.
What's the Leviathan?
The Leviathan is the Leviathan. Everyone knows what it is.
I don't.
Well, it's really long and dark and has large scales. It's like an eel, but different. It's got a huge head, big eyes, and a mouthful of teeth. And if you're walking on the shore without paying attention, it can beach itself just to get to you.
Riley looked at her cousin.
That's what attacked our boat.
Leviathan sank your boat and you're still alive? Whew. You really were lucky.
Lucky. That thing nearly killed us. Now my mom and uncle are missing. You call that lucky?
Surviving the Leviathan is very lucky. It eats anything.
Miss Pigglesworth started barking again.
Of course. We must tell the others what happened. Come, everyone's expecting you.
Riley looked over to Alfie. None of this made any sense. They had washed up on what looked like an empty island, but Bastian said everyone was expecting them. Who was everyone? And what about the Leviathan?
How can anyone be expecting us when we weren't expecting to be shipwrecked?
Oh, we always know when there's new arrivals coming. But it's been a very long time.
How do you know?
The older ones tell us. Come, it's this way.
Riley followed Bastian towards the jungle. Yesterday, she was irritated when her father didn't believe her about seeing the mermaid. Today, she was irritated by Bastian's casual response to the news that a sea monster attacked their sailboat. The more she thought about it, the less she believed any of it was real. At the edge of the jungle, Alfie stopped.
Nope. I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what's happening. This is getting too weird.
Bastian frowned, looking confused.
Why would you want to stay here when you can be in the community? Aren't you hungry or thirsty? We have food and everything you need.
What I need is to find my mom. I don't care about any community, and I don't care about Leviathans. I just want to find her.
There's no need to be rude. Rudeness can lead to strife, and none of us want that.
I don't like this moron, and I don't trust him. I'm not going to any community. Come on, we don't need his help.
But you can't go further down the beach. It's not allowed.
Why not?
Because farther along is the start of the Red Cloak territory, and beyond that belongs to the others. Please, just come back to the community and we can help you find your family.
Riley shrugged.
Let's just go to the community. We haven't seen anyone else on this beach or debris from the boat. Dad and Mary might be there already.
Alfie looked at her for a moment and then nodded.
Okay, we'll go with him. But if this is some kind of trick...
Riley nodded.
I know.
So you'll come?
Yes, but only if you promise that they'll help us find our family.
Bastian grinned.
I promise. Now, it's this way.
Riley and Alfie followed Bastian into the jungle. Almost immediately they felt a change. The temperature was a bit cooler out of the sun. And whereas the beach was mostly silent except for a few seabirds and the gentle washing of waves on the shore, the jungle was teeming with sounds. Birds chirped and unseen animals rustled in the undergrowth. All around them, impossibly large leaves grew on vines that wrapped around tall trees with trunks wider than a car.
Shorty, look at the size of this tree. It's bigger than a redwood.
And those vine leaves are almost as big as me.
Bastian appeared surprised at her comment.
These trees. They're small because they're still young. There are others which are much larger.
Please, tell me you're kidding. Trees that are bigger than these.
Bastian nodded. Riley looked at her cousin but said nothing. Everything about this island was strange, including Bastian.
Riley, why did Alfie call you Shorty?
Because I'm older than him, but he's taller than me. He does it to annoy me.
But that isn't nice. It could hurt your feelings.
He turned to Alfie.
Why would you want to hurt Riley?
Alfie shrugged.
Because she calls me creep.
You do?
Bastian asked Riley.
Well, yeah, sometimes.
I don't understand. Why would you use hurtful names for each other?
Don't you ever tease anyone?
Bastian shook his head.
No, we all get along here. Using names to hurt someone would be wrong.
Riley looked over at her cousin and raised her eyebrows.
Wow.
Alfie muttered. His expression showed he was just as shocked as she was.
How much farther is this community?
It's just ahead.
They pressed on through the dense jungle for a short while longer. Then the trees thinned, giving way to neatly groomed grass and shrubs. Just beyond that were strange structures. Riley gasped. She had never seen anything like it before in her entire life.
What is this place?
Bastian grinned and swept his arm wide to invite them forward.
Welcome to Atlantis!